You're tuned in. To Starrdom100 Radio. Starrdom100 Radio.
What time is it?
With your host, Tanisha Davis. We're the show that's keeping it all the way 100 with you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the heavily orchestrated, never duplicated lyrical symphony known as the Eternal One Eternity, aka Mr. Everlasting, the Lyrical Assassin, and you are tuned into Starrdom 100 Radio. Let's go.
Call security!
Yo, what's poppin'? It's the Young Lion, Sammy, and right now you're tuned in to Starrdom 100 Radio. Keep it locked.
When I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Back in the days
when I was just a little gigolo, I looked up to my bigger bro, begged if I could kick it. So when he went out with girls, I could go tagging along, nagging. If she had a sis, maybe could mac a baby hood rat. You'll remember way back then when it was 1985, all the way live. I think I was about 10.
What's up, everyone, and you are tuned into Starrdom 100 Radio, and this is your host, none other than Tanisha Davis. And today is Wednesday, October the 14th, and we have a very dope discussion ahead of us today. We will be speaking with author Mickey Royal. So I'm super excited about this discussion, and I know you all will definitely enjoy what's being shared today on the show. Mickey Royal, how are you doing?
I'm always good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I've been reading about you, and before I even get into talking about what I've read about you, please share with the listeners just a brief, intro about who you are and, how you got started.
Got started doing what in particular?
With your with writing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, with writing in particular?
Yes.
Oh, I've been writing for years. I started writing really early. If you want to go all the way back, first wrote my first play around age 5. If you want to go all the way back there, but my particular genre, just in which I write now, I kind of lived a certain life, and I decided to write about it. When I started to write, I wanted to write, and I asked the guy, what should I write about? Because I wasn't going to write about these things. I was just going to tell tales. And he said, write what you know. Mm-hmm. And I said, you really don't want me to write that? And he said, people do. He said, you'd be surprised how many people can relate to the things that you write about, no matter what you're writing about. He said, but write what you know. Start with what you know. Start with your story. Whatever in your head, put it on paper. Mm-hmm. So I started, and here I am.
Wow. Awesome. I was checking out your book, The Pimp Game, which is like an instructional guide. Can you share with us a little bit about this book and what inspired you to write this?
Well, The Pimp Game is kind of a how-to manual. It's the first and only one of its kind. And what inspired me to write it was I noticed that, especially in the music genre, a lot of people were referring to pimps and things like that. And I was seeing documentaries, and I would see movies, and I would watch them. And I go, that's not correct. And I would say, they left this out. They left that out. I was almost taking notes. I was like, that's not true. Because you can tell when you're looking at a story where the true story and reality starts, and then where Hollywood introduces like an outside narrative or a variable, and I'm like, oh, that's where the story goes south, or where the explanation goes south. And I was watching the documentary, I said, none of this is true. He's telling this. I said, anyone who's lived this is not telling the truth, or they're leaving this out, or that's not how it happens. So instead of just sitting there being a critic, started putting my thoughts together and actually, because no one goes into the psychological aspect of what happens. They talk about, okay, this is what starts, this is the ending, sometimes this is the middle. There's a long, I don't want to use the word history, there's a lot of psychological aspects or psychological reasons why X, Y ends up Z. And no one ever touches on that. And they never talked about that. And that's what made me just I started writing those notes based on what no one else was saying. Because I was watching certain things and listening to certain things. I said, either they're lying or they're making this up. They couldn't have been there.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not how it happens. So I just started writing and I couldn't stop.
Wow. I like that you brought up about the difference between reality and what Hollywood shows us on TV, because every time I think of a pimp, I'm thinking about stuff that I've seen in the movies, you know, the guy with the flashy suit and the fur and the rings and the permed hair, you know, like that's what we're thinking. But I like that you brought out, like, a lot of that stuff is not reality, you know.
No, a lot of it is, and it's glamorized. It's no different than if you were telling a mob story. And I've worked with certain wise guys. I've never seen any of them with slick back hair that talk like, these guys gotta. That's Hollywood. That's
right.
W.G. Robinson. They don't speak that way. They don't walk that way. They don't dress that way.
Wow, I like that you bringing that out. So it's kind of educating people like that stuff you see on TV, that's nowhere near what's really going down. And a lot of people also feel like a pimp is kind of like someone out to control women. So what are your thoughts on that statement?
I used to tell people, I said, you have to look really close at it. I said, look really close. I said, a pimp, does he really want to control women, or is he really trying to control men? Women don't have the money that he seeks. Men do. It's like, if you're a fisherman, are you really collecting worms, or are you using worms to catch fish? So you're really not really manipulating worms. Worms are what you're using to attract fish. You really want the fish. You're not trying to manipulate women. You're trying to teach women how to manipulate men. So who better for the sheep to learn from other than a wolf? Because we're trying to catch wolves here. We're not trying to catch sheep. But I know what sheep want. So, yes, I might use a piece of cheese, or let me speak in past tense. It's been so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
I might use a piece. He manipulates cheese. That's what he does. So he does it. He catches mice. Mice want cheese. And what I want, the mice have. From a mouse who uses cheese to catch mice, that has nothing to do with the cheese.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you're writing in this book. This book has been written from personal experience. And how did you get involved in that line of work?
Oh gosh, it was I can say it was a gradual ascend or descend, depending on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I started around age 13.
Wow.
But it wasn't that life. It was just street life. You know how, let's say you work at Federal Express or a job of a major corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're working at the job. Let's say you start off in the mailroom.
Mm-hmm.
And you know how there's a bulletin, like you start, and there's a bulletin, and they have jobs within the company.
Yes.
That require certain things, so you don't venture outside of the job. You say, oh man, they're hiring for such and such. You just need maybe 6 months or so and so. So you take a night class and you move up. Or you might be a policeman and say, oh, I want to be a lieutenant, so you need these qualifications. You're still a cop on the beat. Mm-hmm. Now you're a lieutenant. Next thing you know, you're maybe a detective. You have a suit on. Then you see, oh, the qualification for sergeant is this. So when you start up in a certain life, I refer to that world as the shadow world because it exists in the daytime right in front of you and you don't see it. I don't like to use the term underworld, but for argument's sake, let's say underworld. When you start off, and I started off, I don't really like to talk about it, but that's what I'm here to do is talk, so I'm talking.
Mm-hmm.
I started off selling drugs at 13. Mm-hmm. I needed money for studio time because I was a songwriter, a rapper. And I saw that I was making money and then not making money with my music. So one kind of overshadowed the other, and next thing you know, it became full time. And certain doors closed, certain doors opened. And by the time I started actually pimping, I was 18, I think.
Wow.
17 and a half, 18, and it just fell into my lap. And the psychological aspect of it and sharpening my tools came when I met a particular woman named Gorgeous. Because no one can teach you about women like a woman can.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Right.
It was a sheep that taught a wolf how to manipulate sheep to manipulate wolves.
Okay.
She was around 40. I was quite younger. And she took me under her wing and she taught me it's only one way to learn about that particular game. You learn from someone who was in it or currently in it. So if you ask a pimp or an ex-pimp, he can only tell you either an older pimp taught him or an older prostitute taught him. So it depends how they came in. One of those two has to open a door for you because it's psychological. Somebody has to teach you how to play chess. Or you can just try, the hard way, You can go out there and try to learn on your own, and you'll learn losing. But it just kind of fell into it. That's not what I went into. I just don't like to use these kind of terms. That's not what I went into crime for. It wasn't early on like that. I'm from Los Angeles, so it was mostly a game type of, drug type of environment, and I didn't look at it as crime. I looked at it as working.
Yes.
Hustling. It was surrounding you. And it wasn't like I was in the Midwest, like in Chicago where it's heavy pimps, or Milwaukee where it's heavy pimps. LA doesn't have that. It was a lot of drug dealers. You'll see me in pictures of drug dealers more than you'll see me with pimps. But it fell into my lap. The door opened, and once I learned, and I was already trained in behavioral science, because unfortunately I don't like to mention this either, but I was raised in the NLI, so I was coming up around 15, 16 as like a student minister. So I was learning a lot of mind control things, but for the good. I kind of went backwards, like how Malcolm X was a criminal and became a preacher.
Yes.
I was on my way to preaching because I had one foot in one world, one foot in the other world, and the other world was just too glamorous for a young man. It was one was telling me how I'm going to have things greater later. The other one was telling me how I was going to have things greater by 12 o'clock. So it was, when you're younger, you just take the easy route.
I want to ask you, now, of course, like compared to today and then back when you were coming up, how do you feel pimping has changed? Like, is it a difference in it compared to when you were in that game, compared to today?
A lot of people might not like what I'm about to say, but I pride myself on always telling the truth. They're not going to like this. But it's pretty dead now. To me, trying to pimp today is it reminds me of someone trying to sell bootleg liquor right now. Why would you buy bootleg liquor from me when you can just go to the store and get Budweiser? That kind of makes no sense. Yeah. Or let's say me being on the West Coast, it's like me selling weed at the project, and I'm like, but there's a medical marijuana dispensary down on the corner.
Exactly. Right.
Why would I do that? So, and of course I went into pornography. We can talk about that much later.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, but today, now, back in my day, and it wasn't that long ago. I'm only 47 years old. So we're not talking about that long ago. We're not talking about in the 50s or 60s or something like that.
Right.
No. But when I was doing it, I don't like to use. I'm going to keep it 100 with you. It was fun. It was fun. The females involved, for the most part, were very happy. They were there by choice. I didn't hear about things like kidnapping. That came long after I had stopped. That was like recent. And I hear it went from pimping to human trafficking.
Yeah.
And it's not fun anymore. When I got into the game, women basically dragged me into it. It wasn't something that I pretty much wanted to do. It was something where the door was open and they pulled me into it. And by the time I was 21, 22, I was in full-fledged, and everyone was happy. money was everywhere, and this is something that they were enthusiastic about doing. Very few tears. The tears came from certain things that would happen, and then I would have to, go to work, so to speak. But there were no tears inside that house. Mm-hmm. A lot of the women danced. When I would come up to the club, they would be working, drinking this, that, and the other. And it was a team, family-type atmosphere. They were always happy about what they were doing. Mm. Nobody was forced. There were no victims. Mm-hmm. And when I see it today, and when I read articles and things like that, and the horror stories, I'm like, I'm not going to doubt that these things aren't going on. Mm-hmm. Because I doubt very seriously people are making these things up. But these stories today are borderline horrific. Mm-hmm. And that's not what we were doing, and that's not what the people, other guys that I knew who were in that life. The women were just as happy. They were just as happy. When you were, we knew we were doing something was a crime. Mm-hmm. But we saw it as a victimless crime. Now, today, it's not a victimless crime.
Right.
And people are really getting hurt. And people are being forced to do things that they don't want to do. Right. And to me, that's like slavery. That's not a game. Yes. That's not fun, and that's not cool. And sometimes guys who are still in the life for some reason, today, I don't know why, because when I was doing it, your biggest penalty was maybe 6 months and a little IRS fine. Now it's 20 years in the federal prison. It's as human trafficking, and they're holding people captive. And that sounds barbaric and ridiculous compared to the things that we were doing.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know anyone who was doing it back then. And when I say back then, I'm not talking that long ago.
Yeah.
But anyone who was doing it when I was doing it, that's doing it today. These guys today, I don't know them. And their tactics and their methods, they conflict totally with what is in my book and the things that I saw and the things that we did.
Yeah, I noticed, like, I was reading in your bio how your book is now being used, by the FBI and the Las Vegas Police Department as a guide to kind of help the agents understand the minds and the inner workings of human trafficking. Tell me, how do you feel about that?
I found out that by accident. Mm-hmm. A particular lady who works with the FBI, she said, because she ordered 100 of my books. Mm-hmm. And I noticed 90 days later, she ordered another 100. That's it. Not 101, not 99. It's always 100. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, out of curiosity, I don't care. Are you buying them? I'll sell them to you. But I was like, where are you selling these? She said, I'm not. We use these as a class, as a textbook.
Wow.
And she said, because your book is the only book, because I have stories. Several of my books are stories, but she said your book is the only one that breaks down the psychological aspect. And if we can get into their heads before their heads get corrupted, then maybe we can, if I can write you a manual step by step on how to take a Buick apart, then all you have to do is read the manual backwards, step by step, and know how to put it back together. So if you're writing a book, or if your book tells you how to psychologically destroy something, then we can actually psychologically reconstruct something.
Right, right.
And she said, your book is the only one that deals with behavioral science and the mind, and mind control on that level. I mean, you have to think about it. It has nothing to do with money, because a lot of their clients, I don't like to use the word tricks, but I use it in the book just for identification purposes. But I said a trick may drive a Mercedes. A trick may be a basketball player. Why would a woman take money from a man in a Mercedes and give it to a man in a Cadillac? It doesn't have as much as he does. It has nothing to do with money. It's nothing at all. He's in her head. But how did he get there? What tools and methods did he use to institute a form of almost Stockholm syndrome into this woman's head? To where she almost feels like she has to save that pimp. She has to give that to him. And there's different levels. I don't want to generalize and put everyone in one particular category and how they, because you can't do that. Like I told them,
right?
and a human trafficker, the methods are different.
Mm-hmm.
The methods are different. You know, a pimp is chosen. I've never asked a woman to work with me. They've always come up to me and asked, could they?
Wow. Okay.
You know? And
all right.
a human trafficker is just someone who snatches someone off the bus.
Exactly.
In a van.
It's against their
I
will.
Said, no. Yeah. I said half the time I told them no.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't have the right mindset. And, I mean, you just can't take tall people off the street and throw them on the Los Angeles Lakers. That's not how it happens.
Yeah.
You know, just because he's a tall guy does not mean he's going to be conducive to our team, and doesn't mean that he's going to be a good basketball player.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be tall or you may be a pretty lady. That doesn't mean that you're going to work well with what I'm doing.
Right. This may not be for you. Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, I said no. I just didn't take everybody that came. They had to come by referral or things like that. But I was doing something, and I was building something. I'm just not going to just grab any shaped brick. That's going to be a funny-looking house.
Yeah.
You know, I need certain bricks. I need certain materials and things like that. So,
okay.
So it didn't bother me that they were using it, you know, for that purpose. But like I had told one person, I said, if you're trying to catch human traffickers, I said, you got to separate a human trafficker from a pimp.
Yeah.
And they're not the same. If you're trying to deter women from being trafficked, that's hard to do because she's on her way to school and someone literally physically picks her up and throws her into a van.
Right. Yeah.
That's not the same as her being disgruntled with everyday life and choosing to do something else on her own.
Right.
That's totally two different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about that because, like you said, you know, if someone chooses to get involved in being someone's, you know, or someone being their pimp as far as a female, then that's a choice. You know, that's something she chooses to do, you know, but when it comes to trafficking, which there are a lot of African-American women who are kidnapped, you know, around the U.S., that's something that she had no choice in. That's not something she decided that, hey, I want to do this, you know. So, yeah, it's definitely a major separation in the two. Yeah.
I said a human trafficker is not a pimp. He's a kidnapper and he's an extortionist.
Exactly.
I mean, that has nothing to do with anything that I've ever done or anything that I know of people in that life has ever done.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, actually, if you're doing it today and you're a pimp, you're actually in a position where you have to protect them from trafficking.
Wow. Wow.
Because they get snatched right off the street. So, and, you know, I don't just, like, I did a documentary not too long ago with National Geographic, and I took them out there, and they wanted to, we concentrated mostly on the street. And I told them, you know, this is where it starts.
Yes.
But there are very different levels of it. I made primarily most of my money opening bordellos and in-call and houses, and from regulars, and I would play certain ads and things like that, because it's like, let's say you're buying a brand new TV right out of the box, but I'm selling it on the corner. Are you going to pay retail price for it?
No.
No. But it's not stolen. It's right from the factory, and it has all the cords. Still not going to pay retail price for it.
Right.
Anything bought off the street is cheap. Anything bought off the street can only go so high. So I noticed that once I started in-calling, I could move the same service, the same product, and quadruple the price. So it was about multiplication at that point, not addition. But you have certain people in the pimp game who like their women on the street because it's still some kind of sadistic, egotistical need they may have inside of them. You know, like to drive by and say, oh, she's doing that for me. I wasn't in it for that.
Okay.
I'd rather they work smart, not necessarily hard, work less, made more money in a safe and comfortable environment. So my biggest thing wasn't the street. I was only on the street for maybe a couple of years, and then we moved indoors, and the money quadrupled, and that's when the fun happened, and we had quite a few adventures.
Wow. So you went from the pimping in that industry to producing films. How did that transition happen? Because you started producing adult films, and you've like produced over 100 adult films. How did that transition take place?
Well, it first started with a particular lady that was the same lady who was a lot older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that she knew a famous porn producer,
Mm-hmm.
Ron Hightower, and he was like the Jackie Robinson of black porn back in the 80s and things like that. He produced How Do You Want It, Tupac, and brought all the porn stars basically into the hip-hop industry. That was the first introduction and the mesh between pornography and rap was the How Do You Want It video, and he produced that, he directed that. And I said, you know him personally? He said, yes, because she was doing websites at the time. And I said, so you have a website, and you know this man personally, and you're doing amateur porn on the website, but you know a man who could put your stuff on the shelf. So her stuff became our stuff, and she arranged a meeting between he and I. And I just frankly asked him, how do you do that? So I assisted him on some of his movies as a second camera. He showed me what buttons to show me. It was basically a tutorial. And me having the mind I have, next thing you know, I started making calls, arranging meetings. He hooked me up with my first contact, my first distributor, and I ran from there. And I already had a limited amount of female.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, at the time I was doing both, but it's like I asked somebody, how much would you pay to have sex with a Puerto Rican girl from New York? He said, maybe $300. I said, okay. How much would you pay to have sex with Cardi B? I said, see, that's a little different. So my job at that point, I switched it, and I said, my job is to make the regular Puerto Rican girl Cardi B. So on the street, I was known as the guy who could put you on box covers. So now that same girl who might date a guy for $200, $300, now she has guys flying in from India to date her for $5,000 because she's no longer that girl on the street. Now she's the amazing Candy.
Wow.
That's on 20,000 box covers, 30,000 box covers all over the world. So they don't want that regular girl. It's not about her looks. It's about she's the girl on my DVD and in my fantasies. So I made all of the girls from my 20s porn stars in my 30s. So the money went up 10 times. They made a lot. I made a lot. And they became actresses. So the transition was, again, ascend or descend, depending on how you look at it, but it was a natural progression.
Wow. You have had an interesting life. I mean,
yeah, I can't believe I'm not dead. After my mother told me about a year ago, she said, I can't believe you're still alive. I said, I know, huh?
Yeah.
I said, it's funny how life works out.
Yes. I mean, oh my gosh. Like you have really lived an interesting life, from just a child on up, and you've experienced a lot. Like how have you applied those experiences throughout your life to today as a businessman?
Well, number one, when you learn chess, like I said, chess is a mathematical game, and in my book, The Pimp Game, it's mathematically infused, and it's written actually in the mathematical code. If you start to read it, you'll get it. And the skills, just like mathematics, are transferable, and you can take them from one aspect to another. If you can rise in the street, you can rise in the corporate world. You can rise if you go to prison. You can rise to maybe a shot caller. If you go to the Army, you can rise to a general. It's the same exact thing. If you can transfer it and look at it from a microcosm to a macrocosm, it's the same exact thing. All you have to do is change the players. It's like if we're playing chess, I might have a chess set that looks like a basic chess set with identifiable pieces. You might have a chess set with, let's say, animals, where the elephant is the queen. I mean, but chess sets are not going to affect the way you play. It's just different pieces. It's the same exact board. So if you switch chess sets on a master chess player, it doesn't matter. You guys can use cardboard cutouts. He's still going to beat you because the skill is transferable. It's not particularly just isolated to that particular chessboard. You can take those skills anywhere. It's math. 2 plus 2 is 4 in this classroom. I bet you if I get in my car and I pull out my fingers, 2 plus 2 is still 4.
Right. Right.
So the skills are transferable. So you can take them into business. You can take them anywhere. It's about building you and building certain parts of your mind to where you are you wherever you go. You're a winner anywhere. So a lot of people who buy my books, they're not necessarily trying to see about pimping. They see the metaphors, parallels within them. And when I get fan mail or things like that, they congratulate me because they're like, oh, I identified the hustler on my job. I identified who the drinks were. I identified who the snakes were. I identified this, that, and the other. You can identify all the pieces on the board. You can move correctly. Now you can develop a kind of a technique to say checkmate. But if you're not even knowing that you're on the board, you're just a pawn being moved around by someone else.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that because a lot of people, you know, are buying the book, and I was wondering, are they buying it to learn how to become a pimp? Have you had people reach out to you as far as like, hey, you know, I'm trying to learn how to do what you did?
A few. You know, I used to do, well, I'm going to start back doing consultation calls and ask you certain things that I tell them at the beginning. I'm not going to instruct you on anything that's illegal.
Right.
And I'm not going to instruct you on anything that's going to hurt you. Now, the illegal part is because of law. The second part is because I can't advise you to stick your head in a lion's mouth and you're conscious.
Yes.
Not unless I want to see you get bit. I said, I'm smart, but I've walked over a lot of smart men's graves. And I'm strong, but when I got parole from prison, I left a lot of strong men back there who will never leave it. So I'm not going to ever give anyone advice that I wouldn't give my son or my daughter. So when most people call me, or most people reach out to me, it's usually because they're having a problem with their girlfriend.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Or boyfriend. Women have reached out to me too, like, I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. How do I go about that? Or a guy might say, you know, I've been a nerd all my life. I'm a very nice guy. I just don't know how to attract women.
Wow.
I don't know how to approach women. So we attack the anxiety that he feels. I said, it has nothing to do with the women. Your anxiety stems from an inward insecurity. So we're going to go through that, and everything else will work itself out. I said, once we correct that, they'll come to you. Okay. You ever have a friend, or this could be you personally, you ever know a person or been that person where you'll be doing certain activities, and all of a sudden that person may start going to church, or that person may start getting their education together, or that person may be irresponsible, but then they'll have a child or something, and they'll start being responsible. They don't physically change, but you'll see them and go, hey, man, how you doing? And then you look different.
Right.
There's something different about you. Like, did you cut your hair?
Yes.
And they're like, no, I haven't changed anything. No, it's just the way they carry themselves now, their eyes, their spirit, their aura, their essence. You can see it immediately. You're like, something's different about you.
Yes.
And I said, once we attack you on the reasons you're having anxiety behind these reasons, behind this issue, and we attack, because it's a deeper issue than that. That's why when you go to a psychiatrist, you'll tell a psychiatrist something like, you know, my wife isn't acting right, and, you know, it's driving me crazy, and I don't know what to say. You know, the psychiatrist ain't looking for us. They'll say, tell me about your mother. He goes all the way back, because he knows that's the root of the problem. He's not going to start with, you can't get, you know, you seem to be able to get your wife to do this and the other, but she doesn't seem to respond to your advances or love or things like that. He doesn't even attack that. He or she, depending on the sex of the psychiatrist, they'll wait and go, did your father go to the baseball game this year? You were 7. He has to go to the root. And once he corrects the root, he'll go home, and that same woman who was yelling at him and go, Johnny, I told you, Johnny, you look different.
Wow.
Something's changed about you, you know. But Johnny has to fix the root of the problem, and the fruit will change on its own. You don't go after the fruit because the fruit is rotten. There's something wrong with the root. You have to change the soil. You have to change, and that will affect the tree, and the fruit will fix itself.
Wow. So we can expect you to be doing some seminars soon as far as helping people with these issues.
Yes, it's very new to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I'm still from where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
So certain questions they ask me, I kind of feel uncomfortable saying. I mean, my legacy is what it is, but to say I'm proud of certain things, no, that would be a lie.
Yeah.
You know, my father has 2 master's degrees. My mother has a master's degree. My grandmother has a master's degree.
Wow.
My baby mama has a PhD.
Wow.
My son skipped several grades, and he graduated from high school at 15.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
then there's me.
Wow.
There's me.
Oh, my goodness. You know, coming from that, you know, that legacy with your parents, and people would not expect, you know, they wouldn't expect that.
No, not what they expect when they hire me or ask me to come out. They think they're going to get a guy in a pink crushed velvet suit and something using 70s playing. You dig? And I'm not what they expect. I said, no, that's a cartoon.
Right.
If you want to hear the reality, I'll explain it to you. But no matter what I say, no matter what particular seminar speech I give or what subject it is, when the guys stand up and raise their hand, they're going, how do I get a lot of girlfriends? I'm like, okay, let's go to the chalkboard. It doesn't matter what I'm talking about. That's the question. How do I approach women? I get nervous. I get sweaty when I walk over there. I said, are you employed? They said, yeah. I said, well, you're employed before you apply for your job? They said, no. I said, how'd you walk through the door? Were you sweaty? Were you nervous? You weren't worried. I said, so we're going to start with the job interview, and the food is going to work itself out. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does immediately, I get the follow-up email, because I always tell them to keep in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if what I'm telling you does not work, then I'm going to give you some more advice and find out why, and that expense is on me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can't give you something that you can use today, then I'm at the very best, very weak, and very worst ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point of taking a medicine if it doesn't cure you? It just makes you feel good.
Right.
No, you're coming here for results. You're not coming here to be entertained. So if you don't get the results that you're looking for, then maybe it's something wrong with what I gave you. But I've never, knock on wood, it's always been for male or female, whether it's advice to deal with their children or things like that, because you're dealing from one brain to another brain. So it doesn't matter if it's male dealing with male, male dealing with female, female dealing with child, father dealing with son. You're just dealing from brain to brain. That's what you're dealing with. It just depends on what you decide to do with that particular brain in which you are, for a better word, manipulating. I don't like to use that word because of the negative connotation. But
yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
How else do you get me to take out the trash? You think I want to wake up at 5 in the morning and drag them through the street? No. Parents manipulate the kids to do that. We do it every day.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, it's for the greater good of the house. I think the only thing that makes good and bad to me are points of view. The only thing that makes something bad is the malice behind it. I said, now, I have a thing called the 3 Ps, the pimp, the preacher, and the politician, because they all use the exact same mind control methods. It's just that one is on a microcosm, one is on a macrocosm.
Mm-hmm.
But I said because if you're using mind control to get someone to stop using drugs, if you're using these same tools and techniques and knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to get them to be a better person or a better father or a better mother or a better husband or wife, I said, is it really manipulation? You're manipulating them, yeah, like hypnosis, but it's for their benefit. I said, that's what makes it good. Now, if I'm manipulating you for my own self-gain and to ultimate demise, and I know what I'm doing going in because I knew exactly what I was doing going in, then that's what makes it bad because of the malice that's inside of it and its intent. So I'm not excusing it, I'm explaining it. Like I said, I look back and I realized when I was in the hole up in Chino, and I was like 40, 41, and I looked up and I said, because you don't have any TV, you don't have any radio, you don't have any human contact.
Right.
I did some things in prison. I was in the hole, and I looked up and I saw my life flashes in my eyes because my life became my television set. So I started from my kindergarten, reenacting with girls, our first kiss and things like that because I had nothing else. No pencil, no paper, nothing. You're just sitting there. And when I was looking, I said, wait a minute. You mean I've been the bad guy all this time? I thought I was the good guy.
Wow.
Wait a minute. So people want to talk about a lot of times with my past. They might be fascinated by it. They might want to glorify it. It's not really glorifiable for me when I look back. But if you want to hear about it, I'll tell you.
Wow.
But it's not like I'm telling you to, hey man, this is what you should do.
Right.
No, I'm not gonna normally tell. I was looking to get my head out the lion's mouth. I got the stars to show it. You might not be so lucky. So I wouldn't tell you to be a race car driver because I crashed and survived. You might crash and burn.
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially if you don't have it in you to do it.
No.
Right. So
if you're already doing something, you can transfer these skills to what you're already doing.
Wow. So how can for those who are listening, how can they purchase your book? Because this isn't the only book you've written. You've written like a ton of books. How can they purchase your book online, and how can they keep up with you on social media?
Well, I'm kind of a dinosaur, and I'm literally stepping out of a cave. So on social media, I have a Facebook page, but that's about it. I try to do the other Twitter things. I can't get I hate to sound like my father, but these kids today, I can't. But I have a Facebook page, and my books are available, all of them on Amazon.com.
Okay.
Ebook, printed book, paperback, whatever. So Amazon is the best way. You can click to follow me on there. You can follow me on social media. My on Facebook. Social media implies that I have other outlets, but Facebook is the one I check every once in a while. I keep up with my email list, things like that. My address is in the back of the book. But Amazon.com is where you can find my books, and I have a few YouTube videos. More of that is coming, but I'm really trying to get into the 21st century as far as the internet and technology is concerned.
Okay, awesome. All right, so for those who are listening in, you can go on Amazon to look up author Mickey Royal. That's MICKEYROYAL, Mickey Royal, to look up his book called The Pimp Game. And of course, once you put in his name, you'll be able to discover other books that are written by him. And Mickey, it has been a pleasure speaking to you. You share so much information, and at some point I want to definitely get you back on the show so we can talk a little bit more.
So we can get into the pornography thing.
Yes, because it's a whole lot more, so we definitely gonna have to have you back as a guest on the show to share more with our listeners. So again, it's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
One of those Happy little fools singing the blues that be always trying to bag with the shag and